You're enjoying Racing World. It's brought to you by Perspective Group. It's your global motorsport podcast show brought to you in conjunction with Race Control Magazine.
Well, it's the 1st of May, and there's only one thing that you can say about May. It's Indy 500 time here on Racing World. Well, welcome back to another edition of Racing World, and first up today, let's just catch up on all things Indy 500, seeing as we've crossed into May. And the first thing off the list, of course, is the Able entry, which would be the 35th entry for this year's 108th running of the Indy 500. There's a little bit of a question mark over this right now, and it's got to do with whether or not RC Enerson can pull together the funding and the amount of time they've got left. The car's there, the engine's there, funding is not quite secure yet. We wish them all the very best because they got on the show last year. Be good to have them back. Otherwise, the field will be down to 34, and then one person will miss out on this year's great race. So let's just hope that there's actually two, just to make it a little bit more fairer for the two disappointed ones, if you like, that end up going home. Second part of the news this week broke yesterday, the fact that David Malukas' contract has been terminated now with Arrow McLaren Racing in the INDYCAR Series. Can't say I was surprised to hear this with the recent announcements of Porsche driving at Long Beach, then again at Alabama, and almost certainly at Indy Grand Prix next week. This is a tough blow for Malukas. It was a great dream for him to get into McLaren. There was a lot of talk about where he'd go. I'd picked him at one stage even for Penske. And, you know, he ended up at McLaren and never turned a wheel with them, all through the fault of a mountain biking accident. How cruel is sport at times? And this can happen to any professional athlete as well. You know, you go out training, we've seen it time and time again, and things happen. And this is one of those things. Can Malukas bounce back from this in another team? Only time will tell, really, because it's going to come down to where he could end up, or where maybe he ends up back at Coyne, or whether his father creates the team that they've been talking about. Because don't forget, they've got a lot of cars in Indy next, including the one that Kiwi Callum Hedge drives for. So for Malukas, it's going to be a hard road to recovery. And it also shows you in some ways how lucky Daniel Ricciardo was last year that he got back as quick as he did. And then the third piece of news, of course, has to be this. We'll call it the photo of the week, seeing as we had one last week with Alex Albon. This week, Scott McLaughlin and the now famous mannequin at Barber Motorsport Park after he'd won the race there over the weekend. And I'm sure we're going to see more and more of this mannequin as time goes on, and she'll be preserved for all times. But that's our photo of the week. So onwards to the third race of the championship, fourth of the season if you include the thermal race, but let's just put that to one side. It's the third one that pays points, and that's what counts. But of course, it was clouded in controversy with the announcement of the Penske push-to-pass allegations that ultimately they put their hand in the air for, and that was the theme for the weekend. Many drivers very vocal about it. On Friday at the practice session, I had the chance to catch up with Graham Rahal through the practice session, or the post-practice press conference. Boy, that's a mouthful, isn't it? And got his thoughts on it, and it's clear vibe that you can see from most of the paddock over this.
Just say this, like you don't want to criticize too much, but I was hoping to stay anonymous on this topic. I didn't appreciate some of the quotes that were made. I'll say that. Like, I didn't appreciate some of the excuses that were made, because I don't think that they're valid excuses. And I was kind of okay with, all right, well, there's a penalty. Yeah, you know, sure, whatever. But then when the stories kept coming out and I kept reading the quotes, I just thought to myself, like, now you're just digging yourself into a hole that is just absolute BS. And I just don't appreciate that. In the spirit of sportsmanship, like, if you screw up, you do something, fess up, move on with life. But I'll just leave it at that.
I don't think it changed the respect. I think I agree with what Graham say. Even though we agreed to disagree there a few years ago.
Yeah.
At that same place. But anyway.
Been a while, maybe. Add some spice this weekend.
No, I think Scott McLaughlin is one of the best driver I've met through my career, coming from V8 speakers and being able to do pole and win races in IndyCar is absolutely stunning. Yeah, I think that's it. I haven't lost any respect for them. I just they tried, they got caught, and we move on.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think the only thing I can say, and you can take it as you wish, but is what I said. I don't appreciate the poor excuses and the digging to try to explain it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's fairly simple. You had access to something that nobody else did, and that's the facts. And you know, that's it. You know, I think it's really, really disappointing to kind of read some of that stuff. But aside from that, you know, we'll go race this weekend, and look, do I think it changes the end result? I mean, no, they're damn good. They've shown today they're going to be fast. You know, they're going to be up front. But
well, Graham certainly expressing the views of probably many drivers in the paddock area, and I guess that was one thing. Very nice comments from Romain Grosjean about Scott McLaughlin, and it says a lot about the fact that they've had on-course action with each other, you might say, over the recent year. But again, respect, and there is an element of respect there. I'm not quite sure whether Joseph Newgarden's come out of it quite as good as Will Power and Scott McLaughlin, but again, only time will tell. Best thing we can do with that now is put it in the books. The points were lost, everyone moves on, and we're on to round 4, which of course will be at the road course at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Well, onwards then to qualifying at Barber, and what a great way to turn the books around and make it an all Penske front row with Scott McLaughlin taking out the pole position and Will Power alongside him. That kind of says quite a lot. Obviously, people believe a lot or don't believe a lot, whatever, but the proof of the pudding is the cars were legal and they ended up clean sweeping the front row. Now, what I'm seeing this year is a very, very relaxed Will Power, very similar to 2022 when he went on to win the championship. And I've just seen some of the same hallmarks in this again. And he keeps oozing this confidence. He's publicly saying it, which maybe last time he didn't. He was more playing the consistency game. He's hungry for race wins this time, which again in 22, he was more than happy to maybe just take the points. So we're seeing a slightly different version there, but the guy is very hungry for it. And it was great to catch up with him at the press conference.
Well, yeah, good bounce back for the team. Yeah, it was, man, from the moment we rolled off the truck, the thing's been great. Really haven't changed much at all. Felt comfortable the whole time. It's just cool to be back in the Fast Six each week, you know, like felt like we should have done it at St. Pete, but yeah, enjoying it a lot, like fighting for poles. It always sucks to miss out by a little bit every time. At least this is like almost a 10th. The 100th really hurts, but it's cool to start up the front. We're strong in races and so determined to win a race, man. Like if I get a sniff of a win, I'm just, it's been so long. So I'm hanging for that. So starting there gives you a great shot.
Well, I think you can hear that in the tone of his voice that he is kind of believing everything he's saying right now. Of course, I had the chance to also catch up with Scott McLaughlin.
David Turner, Racing World, go ahead. I think you know these two gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dave. First one for you, Scotty. Congratulations to both of you, actually, front row. We'll call it a Trans-Tasman front row, so that's even better. A lot of people were commenting about the variation in cloud cover and temperature, and particularly maybe track temperature during that qualifying session. Did you actually feel any of that at all?
Say again, sorry, Dave.
Just changes and variation, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the sun is pretty strong here. It's quite hot here at the moment. Certainly, you know, there was times where we had a lot of cloud cover and then times where we didn't. I think it probably affects more, and for me, it's the newer tire that probably affects the track temp and whatnot and how the car feels. But on those two runs, it felt pretty similar at the end there.
And then the thing I noticed as well, watching coverage both yesterday and today, how aggressive you need to be on pit in before you get to the demarcation line, if you like. That's a tricky little section to negotiate during the race, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Particularly if someone's not pitting, because it's quite a wide entry, late apex to turn 16. So you've sort of got to wait on people, especially if you're behind them, so you don't hit them. But it's a wicked track here, man. This is somewhere that I've actually, you know, someone from Australia, New Zealand needs to come and check it out, because it is really cool. And you know, a lot of camping. It's great for the fans. Fans can watch everywhere too. So we have a blast here.
Yeah, I was lucky to visit there a few years ago and love the museum as well. It's a pretty impressive place. Will, you said to me last week at Long Beach, so I'm going to talk to you about this again, how quick these cars are, and you felt that you're still on for maybe a front row lockout at Indianapolis in over a month's time now. You still feel that way?
I certainly do. Yeah. I just, like I said, I'd be shocked if one of our cars isn't fighting for pole at Indy. Done a lot of work, and we've been quick everywhere. But in particular, we've done a lot of work for that race. So I think we'd all be a bit disappointed if one of our cars wasn't on the front row, but at least, but I think fighting for pole.
It'll be very good to see it transform in just a few weeks' time, and we're out of here in a couple of days, so we'll see you guys soon. But all the very best for the efforts today. Well done.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us, David.
I'm going to keep harping on about this, but I really, really believe that this is a willpower that is a serious championship threat right now. I know everyone in the championship is, and we're still only early days. We're only 3 races into the 17 races that there will be, but there's just something that's ticking boxes here. And the next few races, I think, will be very important to see just how that plays itself out for the rest of the season, really, in many ways. Anyway, onwards to the race. Let's just leave McLaughlin alone and out of this for a minute. The other Kiwis, Marcus Armstrong, very fine form from Armstrong, both in practice, qualifying, and the race, and a little bit unlucky to finish where he did. He deserved to probably be where his teammate ended up finishing, which was on the podium. But he held the flag very high for Chip Ganassi Racing over the weekend, and I think it's just a matter of time now till we see Marcus on one of those steps of the podium, if not the top step. There is so much, again, you just feel it's coming, so it's just a case of when, and I think as soon as he gets that first win out of this way, as they say in racing, the floodgates will open and there'll be more. So big race for him, probably at Indy Grand Prix. Then his first attempt to qualify for the Indy 500. And boy, oh boy, I think he'll actually be very excited about that and the prospect of even racing in the race. Other Kiwis that were there, just slightly off course for a second, of course, was Callum Hedge in the Indy Next Championship for HMD Motorsport. Another great performance from Callum, struggled a bit in qualifying and practice, but came to 9th in the race. And I think, again, this is learning curve. Barber is a very technical track, one that requires a driver to absolutely put everything on the limit for lap after lap after lap. So Callum's coming to terms with that, and we'll see more from him, I'm sure, in the races that come to play. And again, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the road course there, I think that may suit him as well. So look forward to seeing that. And then, of course, the other Kiwi in IndyCar, Scott Dixon. Well, this was a complete turnaround for what we'd seen from that pretty much dominant performance at Long Beach a week ago to something that just didn't really click. And Dixon was clearly almost at times the weakest of all 5 Ganassi cars. Struggled in practice, struggled in qualifying, struggled in the race, spun in the race. It just didn't come together. And you've got to put that down purely to it's just one of those things. It's just the way it goes. But the car was a bit slow by comparison with his teammates. And Scott's better than what we saw and what the results show. But again, it was still a race finish, still championship points. And believe you me, Dixon will still stay in this championship battle. He's been there before, knows it. It did ultimately, however, hurt him in the championship battle. And we'll talk about that shortly. But the winner, of course, none other than Kiwi Scott McLaughlin, drove a great race, got back in the traffic. There was a lot of banging of wheels going on amongst the traffic all weekend long, and certainly during the race. A lot of people doing some pretty crazy things out there, very aggressive driving, and a lot of that certainly won't work at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, that's for sure. So need to just keep an eye on some of those driving tactics right now. But for McLaughlin, it was the top step of the podium for the 2nd year in a row in what is called the Meat Wagon, sponsored by the Jolly Good Ranchers. Congratulations, Scotty. You certainly gave it a bit of jandor, as we'll say today. A thing that Will brought up that I was quite interested about, he was saying that when you guys got caught back in traffic, how the balance of the car changes because of the dirty air and everything like that. How off-putting is that psychologically when you've been running in that clean air for so long?
Yeah, it certainly is a bit of a shock to the system, just thinking about like where we position the cars and whatnot, but you just got to build up to it nicely. Don't overstep the mark too quickly, and then just figure out what you got and then attack. And sometimes you don't have as much time as you want, but it's a bit of seat of the pants stuff. And that's where I think Will is amazing. He's just an amazing driver with feel and instinct. So, he's a good teacher for that, or at least a good person I can analyze to be better with. But yeah, it's a lot of fun trying to figure out what any roll bar positions your car should be in. And yeah, it's really cool.
And then just also sort of a little bit of a follow-up. Did you find that the new aero screen was warmer in the cockpit for you today over version 1?
I've found it's been slightly the forced air more so. Yes, we've got a little bit more airflow for sure, but the forced air into our helmets is a little less. Whether the way that the air's coming into the windscreen is a little different, and that little inlet's probably not as effective. But you know, we have mentioned that to IndyCar, and they're working with us on it. It's a slow process. We work together on it with Delara, and just thankful that we've got something like that above our head, keeping us safe.
Well, again, big weekend for you guys. Good for you in the meat wagon as well. So just good to get it home, and we'll see you in a week's time as well, back up in the US, and look forward to that month of May.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Dave. Cheers.
Then just after my chat with Scott during the press conference, Jenna Fryer from AP asked a very curvy question, which I'm going to include here because it was quite interesting to get his take. He's been round it before in Australia with Ford versus Holden and all those sorts of things, and the way fans react. So she asked him how he felt the fans would react to what happened with Team Penske over the weekend.
Sort of business as normal. Is that the reaction you were expecting from the fan base?
Yeah, look, you have the fans are passionate. We love them. If you're getting booed, that's a good thing. They're passionate. They love the sport. If you're getting cheered, that's a good thing as well. I've always looked at it, sort of two ways. Obviously, you don't want to be a guy that they don't like, but it's ultimately doesn't affect the way I go about my racing. I just hope that eventually people can see that I race with a lot of integrity, a lot of honesty, and what happened and transpired last week was just a mistake, and it's a human game as well. So I've always had a tremendous amount of support here in America. I've always been grateful for that, and hopefully we can win a few people back. But certainly a lot of the people that say a lot of crap online, on social media, they're probably the people that will come shake your hand and say, "Hey, good job," So it's tit for tat. It's part of it, and that's part of being in the spotlight as well.
All up a pretty professional guy, there's no doubt about that, and one that just took a huge leapfrog from being last in the championship to back up in the championship game. So it shows you how strong a win can be in this championship as well, and how it pays out points wise. So again, looking at Indy Grand Prix, all of these guys go in with contention. Indy Grand Prix is never a form guide to the Indy 500, as most people know. That's a completely different type of track altogether, different spec car. What it does, though, is it gives a little bit of confidence. The teams move in there now for pretty much the whole month, and it's game on, as they say. Dixon slipping in the championship. Hurt are now the championship leader. Again, early days in this championship. We won't see, I don't think, the dominance that we saw from someone like Alex Palou last year in the championship. In saying that, though, we didn't see that transpose itself until after Detroit. So early days again yet. Next thing, however, is the focus on the 500, and she's all to play for there. The biggest race in the world, 450,000 spectators, the largest single-day sporting event, bar none. So anyone that's going or anyone that's listening to this, this is the mother of all motor races. There is no doubt about it. You can have your Monaco Grand Prix that day, and it's got history in its own right, part of the Triple Crown for sure with Le Mans and the Indy 500, but 450,000 people in one venue at one time, pretty much shouting for maybe one or two competitors at a time. She's a great place, and I look forward to seeing that. And as far as Racing World's concerned, we're on that big silver bird in just a few days' time, and our next edition of Racing World will come to you from 16th in Georgetown or the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Until then, thanks so much. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you from Indy.